Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, it's really unfortunate that Horacio obviously cannot be here now because we intentionally scheduled his talk right before my talk. Horacio was about to talk about the VuFind API and some small applications, web applications he developed for the VuFind API. And my talk's also about a very similar topic, or exactly the same topic, so to say. And well, but I think I can do it as well and give some insights on what I did. But before I continue, I'd like to no, that doesn't work. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. I decided to use just my browser for the presentation. I hope you can see everything clearly. Is that good for you?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, thanks. So thanks, Andre, for the introduction. Yes, my name is Leander Seige. I'm head of digital services at Leipzig University Library. We run VuFind not only for our own library, but also for a couple of other libraries in Germany, 20 libraries, 20 academic libraries, as some kind of community, VuFind community called Think. So we share the same resources, the same infrastructure for a couple of libraries. So that's what we are working on here in Leipzig. But I'm going to talk about a SPA for VuFind, or yeah, maybe the API library. So that's how I call my talk today. But we don't intend to put VuFind in the bathtub. No, SH application. Single page applications are JavaScript web applications that are loaded just once. I will explain later what that exactly means. And once such an application is loaded in the browser, no further page reloads are necessary for the whole web application. And all further communication between the server side and the web client side of the application happens through the API of VuFind in this case. But I think this approach might be still relaxing and refreshing for users and for our servers. My personal experience with this kind of technology is that I got in contact with this, for me, completely new JavaScript world in the context of other projects. I started to play around with the single page application framework React and its ecosystem, just to understand what I'm actually talking about. And I have to admit that to some extent, I fell in love with it. I really liked this kind of programming, but I'm still far away from being an expert on that. In the recent years, I created a couple of prototypes using this kind of technology, often in the context of the International Image Interoperability Framework, the IIIF, and needed some kind of distraction, a new fun project for me to work on. And then I had this vision, a single page application for VuFind. Just a quick step back. Usual PHP-driven websites, you know this, basically work like first you open the website, then you click on it, your server renders a new the PHP software on your server renders a new HTML document, maybe including some JavaScript, and then this new web page is loaded in your browser. You click again, a new page is created and sent to your browser, and so forth. But the single page application is a completely different, or a little bit different. In the first place, when you open the website, the whole application, the whole JavaScript application is loaded into the web browser. And from now on, every click leads to a replacement of the current content of regions in the website. So there's no new page reload happening when clicking or when using single page applications. It's just data transfer between your web application and VuFinds API. So what are the advantages and drawbacks of SPAs? SPAs have a huge impact on user experience, I think. They are faster and more comfortable for users. They load, or they don't even load. They are faster because they don't have to load new web pages. And because they transfer data only from the API to the web application, you can do client-side caching and even move logic into the client. You can move load from your servers into the clients just for each client individually. Of course, there are also drawbacks on it when using SPAs, or at least there are concerns what could not be possible with single page applications. For instance, how if there's just one page being loaded, how do I realize, for instance, links, persistent links to items? How can I use the browser history? Can I provide my users with moving backward and forward in my browser history? What about accessibility? And single search engine optimization could also be a problem. It could be hard for search engines to harvest or crawl single page applications. But most of those problems have been solved already. SEO is, I think it's not very easy to solve, but there are approaches to deal with this problem. So if you want to program single page applications, there's a huge selection of frameworks for it. For instance, the React framework, AngularJS, Vue.js, Meteor.js are very popular frameworks for building SPAs. They often utilize the Node package manager and other popular tools from this whole modern JavaScript ecosystem. And for my experiment, I used the React library. React is great for building SPAs, and it was originally developed by Facebook. And I used some other important libraries. For instance, the Redux state management library, then the Material UI library, which implements nicely designed UI components you can easily reuse in your single page application. This library, or these UI elements have been developed by Google. And another important library is React Router for routing of the single page application, and for instance, to implement the persistent UIs. If you have never worked with this technology, I just copied a small code snippet from the React tutorial, a small hello world code snippet, and you can read this snippet from the bottom to the top. I really like this way to plug components hierarchically into each other. Direct DOM renders this app tag, so to say, and this app tag is defined in this function block, and there are other tags inside here defined in other functions. But it's not how you really develop React applications, I think, but maybe it can give you a short impression of the basic idea or basic concepts of this framework. So the VuFind SPA, I developed this experiment I did, implements a single page application for VuFind's API. It implements the basic search functionality, of course. It supports facets, infinite scroll, it's responsive, and it implements persistent links for records. Bookmarks are also available, and a nice bar chart for publication dates. And now it's demo time. So this is how the application looks like. The UI elements you see here are basically unchanged from what Material UI provides you with. You can select just, for example, title and author on all fields, the find button. And for testing, I implemented a small dialog to choose from different APIs available on the net. For instance, here today we use the VuFind API of the advanced demo. But for instance, there's also the API from Finna available, or other libraries. I think once is from Argentina. I'm not quite sure. I think this is Horatio's API here. And this is an API from a public library in the US. I just can't say which one it was exactly. So, yeah, as usual, you can type here whatever you want to search for. And then the first screen was already in SPA. And now the content of the SPA has been replaced by these elements. There are, I think this screen consists of 3 components. The list of records here, the facets, and the head of the web page. Here's this selection. Let me search for something different. I really like to search for George Orwell because you can see very nice that in 1984 there has been more publications on George Orwell than in any other year. But as you can see, the page never reloads. You always see that there's something happening, but all these things happen inside the JavaScript application, and there's no page reload at all. Yeah, pretty simple. And what else could I show you? Well, this is the list of records. There's an infinite scroll. This is just a simple way to ask the API for another batch of 20 records, which are just appended to the actual list. forever and ever. And what I like very much is the bookmarking function. So this icon immediately updates, tells you how many bookmarks you have. And if I open the bookmark screen, it just goes up and is a layer over the current components of the API, of the web application. So I can delete these ones. It's super simple. As for the title view, it's, yeah, I didn't have the time to render these mark records much neither, but it's clear, I think, how it works. You just get the data out of the API, and then you can do with these JSON or in this case, your mark XML record, whatever you want to display it. But I also want to draw your attention on the address bar. If I open such a title, then the address bar changes and shows the persistent link to this very record. So I can copy this one and paste it, for instance, in another browser, or send a link to someone else, and then the application, which is now loaded the second time in another tab, knows by using this React router. Oh. And the library also implements this back and forth thing. So I can go back and forth in the history, but also close this one. So let's have a last look at the mobile version. Was also quite simple, I'd say, to modify just the CSS to do all these changes. Well, you can imagine how this works. So, okay. So now I'm done with the demo. There's one last feature I'd like to point out. This experimental project also implements a very basic version of a so-called progressive web application. This means you can run this web application on your mobile device just like a native app. This works with Android and with iOS. You just have to add some additional information, a manifest file and such things to your website, and then you can use it as a so-called progressive web app. That means you open the web on your mobile device just as any other website, and then you have the option to add this app to your home screen. And if you do this with a usual website, then it's just a bookmark. And if you click on it, the browser opens and you see that website again. But in this case, with a progressive web app, you have also the option to add this one to your screen and change the name and something. And then you have this link on your mobile device. But if you open a progressive web app, then it appears like a native application on your mobile device. It has no address bar. It has no other browser-related UI elements. It just runs and looks and feels like a native application on your device. And as far as I didn't check it, and I'm not entirely sure, but I saw there are tutorials on them on that fact that you also can place such apps in Google's and Apple's app stores. So that's this was just an experiment. Maybe you can get inspired by it. I hope I can spread some ideas on what can be done today. And yeah, to be honest, I would love to see VuFind moving a little bit into this direction. So thanks a lot. The demo is here. Just try it for yourself. I actually forgot to open the GitHub repository. It's still private, but I will switch it to public immediately. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, ask them now or later.
We do have a question coming in from the Q&A. How do you create a deep search link?
The deep search link. I think this is very similar to the link here in this. For the record view, you just would define another path up here in the address bar, and then make the router open the web application in the desired state. I think it can be implemented very simple.
So does the React router actually?
That's the question, but I want to just add that I'm looking forward.
Damien, I can't hear you. There are some network issues on your side, I think.
Sorry about that. Yes, I started to talk just as everything broke up, and then I heard other people talking, so I stopped.
Oh.
I was just going to ask whether the React router overrides your browser reloading the page when you change the path. I wasn't aware that was technically possible.
It seems like it is possible for the exact behavior and interaction with the browser. I can't tell you any exact details because I worked on it in some kind of experimental mode. But I would encourage you to look at it, and I think it's possible.
Definitely adding it to my list.
Yeah, we have a question in the chat for road mapping tomorrow to talk about this as an idea to build the next VuFind theme as a single page application. So yes, definitely add it to the list to talk about.
I'm so nervous. I don't find the option to switch this repo public. Where is that? I can't find it.
I got another question. Can I? May I?
Certainly.
Please.
Please. For all of us that are not so deep inside all of this technical stuff, as you are, as I said, this is quite deep in it. I saw what you were presenting, and if you would go like wild, I know that maybe there's something I don't see here because it's some kind of how you do things in the internet with an app and stuff like that. There's something like I put this in a box and I will have to check on this later. But if you would like like imagine what normal user like me that is not very into deep in this, what could I do with this? What is the most exciting thing that you can think about? Not only this is quite exciting. I don't want to say that that's not, but what it's like when they say, this would be a good idea. I want to see it right there with this option. I would love to see it like this. Could you give me like some more?
Well, I think it provides you as a user with a new user experience. I think it changes the way you experience this application. I would not say there is something you can do with other technologies, but the way the application works and how it feels, that's the main difference, I think. And from the programmer side, I would say once you understood how those things work, they are really fun to work with. That's my personal impression.
Thank you.
I think the repository should be open now. I managed to switch it public. I just got an email from Horatio. He apologizes for not being here today because he has a very complex meeting, he writes, in the university. So unfortunately, he cannot join our meeting today.
Well, I can report that your GitHub is open. And
thank you.
I suppose if we don't have that other talk, if people are interested in having a deeper discussion about SPAs for the next half hour or so, I'm certainly happy to get into that ahead of the road mapping, since it's a pretty big topic. I certainly have a lot of thoughts on it. So I'm open to doing that.
Andre and I already had a short conversation today on this topic, and about how important the API might be in the future, or if we should more maybe distinguish between the front end part and the Solar search engine / API part of VuFind, if that's even possible from the software architectural view.
I mean, I think there are a lot of things that VuFind currently does that would be extremely challenging to refactor into an SPA. I mean, I think a lot of what we're doing is taking advantage of the current architecture of the application, and rebuilding it as an SPA would just require turning the whole thing inside out. So
Yeah.
it's hard to see it as a future direction for the project in anything like its current form. Though at the same time, I think it's an excellent exercise for thinking about how we can expose functionality through useful APIs. But I think the biggest concern I have about the single page application approach is that one of VuFind's greatest strengths is that it does a lot of loading in a context sensitive way based on what you're looking at. So for example, every record driver can have its own set of templates so that you can render each type of data in a different way. And if you do that with server-side rendering, as we currently do, you can have, thousands of different things, and you're only loading the things that you need to render the current set of results. Whereas if you do that in a single page application way, where all that logic is on the client side, you essentially have to bundle it all up and push it down, or else come up with a way of dynamically loading the things that you need when you need them. And I'm just not sure that that's better as an SPA than it is as a server-side app. And I absolutely share the observation that building these things can be a delight. I've built some React things and have been very happy, but I feel like it solves some problems really well and others less well. And I've encountered a lot of really terrible single page applications that just cause my browser to go into CPU spirals and load things out of order and get into weird states. And so I have a great appreciation for the simplicity of server-side rendered pages that actually work right. So I think it's all a question of balance.
Yes, I understand, and it's very common. This concern, I heard them in other projects as well, and I understand them completely. On the other hand, if I imagine those frameworks have been built for large websites, like Facebook, for instance, with a lot of components in the front end. And if you have business logic, which is not security sensitive in a way, and you can easily move this logic into the client, then I think it is an interesting option to think about whether if you have 100 simultaneous users, do you want all those 100 processes on your server, or just each client does its own thing and on its own hardware? And devices today are often powerful enough and to run even large JavaScript applications. Yeah. 2 years ago, I had absolutely no idea of all this JavaScript world. The biggest thing was jQuery I thought of, and it really changed my mind playing with React in the last months. And I also experienced a different approach of programming. All those asynchronous things happening in such an application, I really had to modify something in my brain to work with these things.
I want to pull in a comment and a question from Dorian Mers of Leipzig. Can we now build a VuFind application without any UI, just provide the API to then be used with the React single page application? And I think that is kind of getting at the core of what Damien was saying, and also what Leander was hoping for in the future, where I think right now the API that VuFind offers is limited compared to the full scope of the features that VuFind offers. I am absolutely in favor of expanding the API so that something like that could be possible in the future, but right now, could we build such a thing? Not without significant work. There's ways to customize VuFind to give you the information that you need. For example, we saw yesterday in the showcase, the IIIF manifests that we're generating for the digital library was a customization that we made that allowed us to run a very robust front end. And I think that's a good goal to eventually aim for, but I think right now, in order to do that, there would be a lot of changes that need to be made. That being said, I've heard a few people touch on this. There are definitely parts of the UI, such as the search that Leander has prototyped here, that are ready to go with the API and may benefit from some single page application ideas to make it more responsive, to make it less bandwidth. There are certainly benefits there, but I think the approach right now, at least for the near future, is it's going to be an optional thing. Whereas turning VuFind into a single page application would be a very long-term goal that as the ambient voice has a lot of concerns to balance. So could we do it now? You could add a lot of customizations to turn the parts of VuFind that you wanted to into single page applications, as Leander is very beautifully done here. I think there's nothing, I think there's no downside at all to making the API more robust, which I think would be beneficial.
I'd like to add and point out that there are additional APIs like Daya and Paya, which could be used combined with the VuFind API in order to build much more functionality into such a single page application, just using openly available APIs to LS services.
Well, it has been discussed at past summits that it might be very interesting to separate VuFind's ILS drivers into a standalone project and make them a dependency of the core project, so that it would be possible, for example, to implement Daya, Paya endpoints on top of them, because that could have other applications as well. And I think cleaning up and improving the ILS driver interface is a bit of housekeeping that would be nice to get done, but which we haven't had the will or the capacity to thoroughly address yet. But that's certainly one piece. I mean, I think if you were looking at single page application for the entirety of VuFind, the ILS drivers are one big piece. The sort of user account and authentication system is another big complex piece, because the security considerations are very different in the SPA context than in the traditional server-side application. And the other thing is dealing with search backends other than Solr, because they all have APIs of their own, and building a VuFind API as a proxy to some third-party API seems both inefficient and potentially problematic, though it would be necessary in order to benefit from the uniformity that VuFind offers by, providing all of these things in a consistent way. And I'm really not sure how to untangle that knot off the top of my head.
I want to elevate a comment from Oliver in the chat saying that it's obviously a lot of effort to build a theme this way. And he's pointing to what's going on with DSpace, which has been trying to exchange the interface for AngularJS. And it's been a process that started in 2015 and is still ongoing. So definitely Oliver's saying coming out in favor of an optional theme and an optional functionality. And if the API is robust enough, I think pioneering something like this is definitely on the horizon.
It also could conceivably be an external project that depends upon the VuFind API, which then is a bit of decoupling, because I don't particularly like the idea of adding a whole new giant complex development project into the core VuFind project before we're sure it's what we want. But I'm very open to, having another repo in the VuFind organization where this work could begin to develop. And of course, it would have a symbiotic relationship with the core VuFind because of the API dependencies. There's also, of course, the question of deciding on a technology stack. Though I like React a lot, it seems like React is here to stay. So that would be, in my opinion, a good place to start if we did want to go down that road.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. It wouldn't be possible if there wouldn't be the VuFind API available to set such an SPA on top of it. So it can be completely independent, just as a library could just provide its services by providing the APIs for them, and other parties like companies or civic tech activists or whoever wants them could use those APIs to integrate library services in whatever products they might work on.
I would like to comment also on that, especially in regards of the index schema that VuFind has is providing. That has come somehow, at least this is my observation, this has come somehow to a standard for lots of open source discovery systems in the library environment. I mean, there's we have, well, let's put it another way. We have VuFind, which defined a Solr index and the data structure in order to search for records. And there, at least in Germany, there are two more discovery systems that are using this index schema and also some root, some logic by VuFind, but who are not part of the VuFind community in itself somehow. And I think it would be pretty cool to have to provide more API functionality in order to have as the index as one core functionality that can be used by other front ends. And I mean, it doesn't matter if it needs to be an SPA or if it is just another, it's a plugin for a content management system or whatever, but that we have those APIs that can be used for having nice front ends, and that all the other business logic, and I totally agree with Damien, I think it would not be very feasible to refactor the code of VuFind to have it as an SPA, because what VuFind provides is more than just having a front end for a Solr index. But this is one part of VuFind, and having like a more obvious distinction between the index and an API and maybe the front end might be useful, especially in regards of getting more parties on board to push forward the development on those API and maybe also index functionalities, and plus having more people working on front ends and maybe getting more features from other front ends as well.
I think that the idea of having sort of a standalone SPA that utilizes the VuFind API as a secondary project also gives us kind of an evolutionary approach, wherein over time, it might be that one of these projects begins to be more desirable than the other, and we can make a decision about whether to continue supporting all the functionality in all the places, but it also doesn't force us in a direction for unnatural reasons. It just lets us begin to experiment and offer options. Certainly there's no reason you couldn't today spin up VuFind, turn on the API and disable everything else and then build an SPA on top of it. That would work. It's just the only thing it's going to do is let you do searches. You don't get any of the other functionality, but we could, in a piecemeal fashion, open up APIs to do more things over time, if that proved to be the best way to evolve.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, sorry?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Now, what I was also thinking about is that that is absolutely true. I mean, there's already more or less everything in place. And the only thing I'm thinking about is that if we set on top of the VuFind index and the API, like an SPA or some other front ends are also using the same schema, it would be quite hard, or it would be necessary in the end, then to make the community way bigger and to incorporate all the other front ends in this way that there's more communication in regards of how, for instance, this API should be developed, and also the index and for instance, the index schema should be developed. And so I think having this as a maybe as a specialized project or something like that, and be more addressable, might be more useful for like a wider community than just the VuFind community in particular.
That is certainly true.
I mean, this is just a thought.
True.
Yeah.
It is
sorry,
certainly,
go ahead, please.
It's a conversation I would love to be a part of, as long as I don't have to lead it. I'll put it there.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think it's more just right now some brainstorming stuff, right? And thinking about what to do next, and what might be also the possibilities, especially in light of VuFind becoming more community oriented and more officially community oriented, as you put it earlier today, by the possibility to integrate it, or to make it a cooperation by the OLF, if I put it correctly, hopefully. There may be also other ways one could develop the whole idea, and to come up with, I don't know, maybe with the VuFind frontend and the VuFind core or something like that. I don't know. It just.
I mean,
I'm just.
Another point of brainstorming is that, you know, the Folio project that is part of the OLF is also all built with the React front end. So conceivably, if we had React components that consume the VuFind API, and we are encouraging Folio users to use VuFind as a front end, it might be interesting to build a Folio module that actually plugs VuFind searching into the Folio platform. I don't know exactly what the end goal of that would be, but it seems like an area of inter-community collaboration that might be fruitful, depending on where we went.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, regarding the availability informations, I mean, as far as I know, Folio is unfortunately not using diapire, right? They have some other not proprietary, but I think EBSCO came up with its own model for availability information, if I'm correct, but yeah. Anyway.
There's even one other project I'd like to point out, which also is based on React, is the new Mirador-free IIIF viewer, or workspace environment, so to say, which would also be an option to integrate with VuFind. I could imagine this really nicely to search digital collections, and then exchange information with such an IIIF-based workspace environment. So you can search your collections, push the digital images into the workspace, and back and forth. This could also be very nice.
And of course,
Go on, please. I will follow.
Sorry, I think I'm having some network lag, so if I talk over anyone, it's not intentional. I was just going to say I'm also a big advocate for the universal viewer, which I think is maybe a friendlier experience for someone who's just looking to view a thing, whereas I think Mirador is richer for scholars who want to interact more, but both are good tools.
Yes, of course.
I got one thing to add to this discussion, because it's very, very, very interesting to hear all your thoughts, and of course to see what is possible, stuff like that. But for me, it's like standing outside a little. This is what was talking about before. There are endless possibilities to do with the stuff. And I would love to have something like this into more how to really enable what is there to bring it to the users. Like, for example, what I was thinking about, like, okay, we got this catalog. Every institution got their own catalog when they just click on the facet stuff. This is a huge deal for them already. And this is something that is very important and what we don't have. And this is what is should be very interesting to enable a search in a web page, if it is possible somehow, just to bring it on and then bring them to the catalog. I don't see. I hear all of you, and I think it seems very complicated. But what I'm missing here is like the perspective. What should be improved, and why should this be improved, and how could it serve the users that are searching? Because this is what we do this for the users, right? So this is something that I have discovered during all my years with VuFind, that it is circling around technical issues, and I would love to free this from this communication, or from the circles, and bring it on to like what should users have. Because when I wrote down that I really like the web version of the web page, like this maybe not, I don't know how people use smartphones now, but I'm using a browser with this, and everything works fine with me on this. So I don't see the need to improve, but I really appreciate the effort to try something new, to create new ideas. But of course, I'm always looking for user experience and how to provide this for them, good ideas like this. And this is something I would love to talk more. And then it's very often come to a very technical point of view, and I'd love to be in contact with this more often when it comes to VuFind.
I mean, to address one angle of this, something that I find frustrating on an ongoing basis is the tension between technical detail and satisfying the user. I think there's a lot of pressure to use the latest technology because it's the latest technology. And I think there's a certain amount of prejudice against VuFind in certain circles just because it's written in PHP, and PHP is not the most popular language among certain groups of developers. I think that doesn't discount the huge value of what we have in the software. And so it's certainly a major concern for me in any forward direction that we be able to maintain the huge legacy of work that we've done that I think is still of value and still useful, and not sacrifice that for the purposes of doing the new shiny thing. But at the same time, there's also the counter current that if we do new and exciting technical things, that attracts more developers to do more things in the project, which in turn can also add value. So there's sort of a paradox here of sometimes the technology seems like it shouldn't be that relevant, but sometimes it is actually very relevant. And in the end, it can affect the user experience. And I don't know the best way to navigate this. And I think that also, you know, this is a perfect example of this is a new technology which is compelling for legitimate reasons and can do interesting things, but it's also, you know, we can't make the decision today that this is the way of the future and we're going to get there, because it may turn out that it's not actually the best solution to all the problems we solve, just some of them. And the process of getting there would probably take us 5 years or more. But all of that, I think I'm falling in a hole of my own making. But just trying to throw some of the issues onto the table that are always churning in my mind when we have these kinds of conversations.
Well, actually, I think, oh, Leander, are you going to go?
I just wanted to say again and make that totally clear that this this small experiment I did here was not intended to as a proposal to replace the whole VuFind code. So that would be totally crazy, and I would never claim such an idea. So it's just an experiment and a way to show how the API can be used and how these technology. I learned to work with them, and it was just a fun project for me to try on, and I thought it would be a nice and interesting thing for the VuFind community to see how the API could be used in such a in such an application.
Absolutely understood, but I think that there are certainly contingents that would love to see the entire application become an SPA for a variety of reasons. And so seeing this demo raises that conversation again. And it's certainly not a conversation I want to totally dismiss. It's just a conversation that we need to be realistic about. And you know, that comes down to road mapping. We need to
Sure.
set our priorities and figure out what we're doing and where we're going. But I think to Marius's point, all of these decisions should ultimately be driven by what we're delivering to the users. If we're going to make a huge technical architectural change, there should be a user concern that's driving that. But to my own earlier ramble, one of the concerns is sustainability of the project, technically speaking, and there may on occasions be large technological shifts we need to make in order to remain relevant and to be able to continue delivering what we deliver to our users. And it's often a difficult decision making.
Well, maybe, I mean, this is almost the perfect transition to the next talk on tomorrow, actually, right? I was just thinking about, because Anne Christensen will then talk about how, for instance, browsing could be more relevant for the users. So my suggestion would be that we continue our discussion maybe tomorrow after those talks.
So yeah, thank you, Andre, for this very well-fitting transition, I think. So maybe we're gonna end the official part of the conference for today. And I mean, there's still the Slack channel open for further discussion. So for everyone who wants to head over there, I guess we can keep on discussing things over there. So thank you on my behalf. Does anyone else?
I got one last question. I've just about some there's now all times are in UTC on the website. It's GTM. So could you help me out a little here? I'm not sure. I check when I want to tune in, but on the web page it's about all times are in GMT, and now it's so. Have anything changed?
I think they're the same, yes.
Same times as today, yes.
Okay, this means this. I would check this.
You can count from now 3 hours back, and we'll start then.